Hey, there we go. All right, I guess we are up and running. So I'm just gonna be working on some assets for the Mythalean zine. And anyone who's out there joining me, let me keep an eye on the chat just in case anybody drops in. All right, I think that'll do it. Yeah, so anyone who's not familiar with me, I'm Evan Winston. I'm the art director at GMG. I deal with most of the interior book art and determine a lot of the aesthetics of GMG Salt Reach Isles and their stream characters and all that kind of stuff. So if you're following GMG, you've probably seen my work somewhere. Right now, as I said, I'm just working on additional art assets for the Mythalean zine, whose Kickstarter campaign is currently on day, I want to say 12. So definitely check it out if you haven't yet. And otherwise, if you're just here to watch some art, come on by. Feel free to ask any questions. I'll do my best to keep my eye on the chat and respond as quickly as I can. If you have questions about the world, questions about art, questions about painting digitally, questions about process, anything like that, don't hesitate to ask. I love to talk about this stuff. What we have here, if anyone's interested, is one of the elf subspecies from Mythalean, depending on who you ask. I won't go into any of the technical details, which is to say the game mechanics and stuff like that, as they relate to these subspecies. But, I have a lot of fun designing the different subspecies of the different races in the Salt Reach Isles for Gold Mountain Games. It's a lot of fun to see them come to life, both, through art and through actual game design and writing, which the rest of the team is amazing at. And yeah, so that's where we are. I'm just working on a spot illustration for one of those subspecies. And obviously, I'm kind of stuck at where to go. I walked away from this piece. I went probably weeks ago now, and now I'm jumping back in, and I'm just struggling with where to pick it up again. But I'll work it out. Not your problem. Let's see. I am painting in Procreate. Anyone who's a fan of Procreate knows exactly how great the app is already. It has completely replaced, the Adobe suite for myself personally. There's definitely aspects of a lot of production workflows where, Procreate can't quite do everything that Adobe does, but at least for my purposes, I'd rather use Procreate. I'd rather find an alternative to Adobe if I can. So, even if Procreate wasn't pulling it for me, I would probably not use the Adobe suite at this point in time if I didn't have to. And if anyone does join in, feel free to throw a message in the chat. Would love to know who's here, if anybody. So let's see. I'm kind of noodling right now. Kind of digging into weird shirt detail or tunic detail that is really not critical at this juncture of the painting. The painting is still extremely loose. A lot of it is very unfinished. There's a, the it is a spot illustration, so I'm not too worried about background and stuff like that. But the ground plane really bothers me, things like that. And so honestly, I'm probably noodling on the shirt as a way of procrastinating from solving that particular problem. Not something I would generally recommend, but like I said, I'm trying to wrap my head around this piece again. It's always tough for me when I get momentum going on a piece and then I have to put it down for a few days, or like I said, in this case, a few weeks. And I come back to it and all that momentum seems to have just gone. Sometimes it's really bad. It feels like you're learning how to paint all over again. Maybe that's normal. So the elves of Lascana and the Saltreach Isles, these guys, they're they were deliberately designed and written to feel distinct from, the familiar Tolkien-esque elves of most D&D properties or just high fantasy properties. And I really liked that about them. I liked that, it was an opportunity to kind of push them in a different direction. They're not totally different. They're very recognizable as elves. But, it gives you some creative wiggle room to kind of explore some new ideas within some familiar motifs. And those familiar motifs can really be like helpful parameters if you let them. So you can start to ask yourself more interesting questions about how they might have evolved or how their architecture might look, what role they might play socially in a party. I mean, a lot of that goes hand in hand with how someone wants to play that character and, of course, their class. But, in kind of that archetypal sort of way, elves often kind of come away feeling a little bit like Legolas. And so it's always a fun challenge to try to take something that is like so recognizable and so familiar and breathe some newness into it. It's not to say that classic elves are in any way a negative in and of themselves, but I liked the challenge that GMG sort of presented me with there. And hopefully, if anyone anyone watching chooses to back the Mythalean Kickstarter, they will as well, as it is entirely about the elvish city of Mythalean. So it comes with lots of very great lore to work with. It comes with points of interest, locations of interest. It comes with NPCs. It comes with items, spells, subclasses, feats, backgrounds. And of course, the entire zine is full of my art. And if you back, you also get a very nice discount code to my print shop. So if you do like my art, or if you back because of my art, that's definitely a bonus. Outside of GMG, I do a lot of art mentoring. I do some art direction for small studios. I do have a regular mentor program each week for up and coming artists, I guess, is how I would put it. I volunteer with children's creative writing workshops. I put out a few comics each year, lately with a group called Unfounded Ventures. They're fun, and actually they're getting that same IP for which I make their comics turned into a tabletop role-playing game designed by Gold Mountain Games. How many more things can I plug in the scope of this session? Anyway, this is all pretty impromptu. Definitely, if you've been following, you'll notice that there hasn't been an art stream like this in the past. There have been a couple art streams with Rob, Leo, and Emma related to the Mad Mage campaign that you may or may not have picked up, but none where it's just me kind of meandering. Not sure whose idea this was. No, it was mine. It was mine. I thought if anyone wanted to kind of get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain as far as the art is concerned, or if the art was really a key point of interest, or if you just like watching people paint, that's valid too. I thought this could be fun for some of our fans out there. I also find that if it's not a point of interest for you, or if you typically don't take the time to dig into this stuff, it's totally fine. To each their own and all. But I do find that it can really help increase the appreciation you have for the art that goes into all the things and that we know and love collectively. It really gives you these kind of cognitive anchor points with which to look at something you're a big fan of and say, wow, that's even cooler than I thought it was. And to really just kind of appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into all of the little details that are basically designed to be taken for granted. The art that goes into tabletop role-playing game is very much art. You look at the likes of Greg Rutkowski and all of these incredible artists who work on Magic and Dungeons and Dragons, and they're often full oil paintings of the variety you might not expect to see outside of a museum, just because they're paintings of dragons and dwarves and elves and other fantasy creatures. It kind of pigeonholes them into a certain avenue of utility that I think is easy to take for granted. It's easy to look at a painting of a dragon and kind of immediately look away. Not if you're a fan, obviously, and I'm probably preaching to the choir there, so whatever. No one's here right now anyway, so I'm just going to say my piece. It's really easy to see a painting of a dragon if you're not, say, a fan of that work, and immediately look away. Or even if you are a fan, to kind of relegate it to this kind of world. Again, not inherently a negative at all, but there is unfortunately that tendency to not dismiss it, but like I said, just kind of put it in a box, put it in a very particular box. And there's a degree to which that's fair, because art is communicative, and it is going to be what you make of it as the viewer. Um, and the art is intending, in these cases, to serve a very definite purpose, whether that purpose is driven by concept or narrative or just plain art direction. Um, and that purpose often defines how it's going to be received. So, to an extent, that reaction is completely valid. It's always a valid reaction, but I take issue with how easy it is as a result to say, oh, that's not real art, or that's not fine art, or that's not high art, or that's not, I don't know, skillful art, or whatever it is. I don't know where this comes from or where it came from, that extremely well executed and planned and lovingly crafted art doesn't make that cut because of its subject matter, when the whole point of art is almost irrespective of the subject matter. Art as a means of expression, anyway. I'm getting a little lofty here, and that's probably not what you're here for. So I'll leave it at that. What am I looking for? So this guy's got green hair, but it's I'm just kind of realizing that how Jokerish it feels. So I'm gonna try to shift those hues so they're not reading quite so pure green. Don't want him to totally wash out, though. And there's a reason why I don't want to push his hair towards, more conventional brunette or even more radical blues. You know what? I'll run with the green. We'll see where it goes. We'll see if I can make it work and not feel like the Joker. I think there's a world in which that's going to work, but we'll see. I also did something pretty different for me with the approach to the hair this time. If anyone cares, normally, I kind of paint the hair as a big cohesive shape of color if I'm working in color, and then I'll kind of define a lot of the midtones and give it the shaping that I want it to have. Give it readable form. And then at the end, I'll kind of do these ribbons of highlights that you see going on there at the very, very end. That's sort of the last step. But this time I did it differently. I just kind of started from the block in, and I actually took my cue from an artist called Schmo Draws. That's her handle. And I just saw her, one of her time lapses or her process videos one day, and I was like, I'm gonna give that a try, and so I did, and I like what it did. Obviously it's not done, so I don't know, I don't know if I've quite adapted it into a way that works for me yet. But I mean, so far I liked it. I liked the sort of early visual cues it gave me, the early roadmap it gave me. Even though you shouldn't necessarily rely on hair highlights as a roadmap. Painting hair is challenging enough without sort of confusing influences. But I think it's a question of me getting used to a new method, not the integrity of the method or anything. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I will report back exactly how I fared with this. But yeah, I kind of like the impression that it gave. What is it that I like? I think that's the point. I should try and figure out what it is that I liked about it. I'm not confidently sure of why I liked it, and so I'm having trouble communicating that. So I like the impression of it, and what does that mean? Sorry, been having a couple of gesture touch and gesture issues with my tablet lately, which might mean it's gonna give up the ghost soon. So if you see some weird like jumping and stuff like that of that reticle, that's probably why. So why did I like this? I like the impression. Again, what does that mean? I guess I kind of like the way it sort of simplistically laid out the impression. This is hair, and this is hair with, the natural and expected oiliness of hair, the reflectivity, and this is the direction of the hair, and this is how the hair is falling. It kind of gave a lot of really compelling visual information with very few landmarks. And I think that is what I liked about it. Whereas before, my natural tendency in painting hair, it always results in a process where the hair just looks terrible until all of a sudden it doesn't. So I kind of liked that sort of psychological reprieve there of, oh, hey, maybe this isn't going to turn out terrible, or maybe I'm not going to have to repaint and reshape this hair 7 times before I'm happy with it. So I suppose that's what I'm reacting to. It's pretty anecdotal, though, because I've really only tried it once. And again, it was a long time ago, a couple weeks now, I think. But like I said, I will report. I'll keep at it. I'll keep experimenting with it. And if it doesn't work out for me, I can always fall back to what I know and I'm comfortable with. But I like finding new stuff. I like learning how other artists do things. I like growing in that way. Trying to decrease the saturation of that dark olive green in these shadow shapes. There's a lot of distracting line work here, isn't there? Yeah. I like painting over the line work, though, because if you turn the line work off at this stage, it does not look good. Which is okay. It doesn't have to look good right now. That's what I would tell. That's what I would tell a mentee. Do as I say, not as I do. Okay, I'm really noodling though. I'm really getting in there with like small strokes and small details that are not called for right now. And man, these gesture controls are killing me. I just kind of want to get to a point of stability, I guess, with the hair, where I know where it's gonna go. Doesn't have to be there yet, but I know for sure where it's gonna go. And I'm still not entirely sold on the green. There's still some. I kept my pencils really loose on this, and so I'm sort of struggling with that now. I've been doing that more and more lately, is sort of diving into paint before a lot of that drawing, the details of the drawing are resolved. It's not something I would generally, I don't like what I just did. Not something that I would generally recommend, but I have kind of been enjoying the freedom that it gives me to draw with paint and be a little bit more, or just break a little bit more easily from that roadmap. Keep talking about how important the roadmap is, and now I'm like, hey, let's throw it out the window. But, it comes from an awareness that it's really easy to dive into paint too quickly as like a shortcut. And a shortcut that is definitely not going to be a shortcut. It's going to take you longer. to fix the issues, or you're going to bake them into your painting, than it would have if you just spent more time on the drawing, more often than not. So it comes from an awareness that that is a thing, and I'm trying not to fall prey to that myself. But I like at this point, it's more like me relying on shorthand than it is saying, "Oh, I really want to just get started painting now. I'm done drawing. I'm ready to move on." So maybe that's me making an excuse, but I think it just comes from a recognition of the fact that I don't really need necessarily all of that detail in order to know where it's going to go. And that comes by virtue of having painted a lot. So I don't need to spell every single thing out in order to give myself the okay to move on and keep going. I can now use that shorthand, and I can rely on it, and I can recognize where I need, more work, where I don't need necessarily more work, or where I'm going to get diminishing returns by spending that additional time resolving the drawing, rather than trying to resolve some of the color and texture and brush economy issues, about which I'm usually having a panic attack at this point in the process. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there for now. All right, he's come a nice way since we started. A little bit. Still feel like I'm being too focused in on the details, though. I want to work on hiding some more of this line art, by which I mean, painting over it. We're dealing with a moment that is lit by, basically a bright sunlight, sunny day. This elf is out with these two creatures. They look like beasts of burden. Probably in a field. Mythalean, the city, it exists in a rainforest, a jungle, but it sort of sits in a very large meadow, in a break in the trees at the mouth of a river, where this space that is kind of surrounded by these rainforest hills and cliffs, much like the town in Encanto is kind of how I like to think of it. It's different in every other way, but that geographically, I guess it's kind of how I always pictured it in my head, and sort of what informed the painting of the cover image for the module, which you may have seen. Not module, for the zine. Pardon me. So at some point, once I feel confident in kind of the forms I'm trying to establish, I'm going to come back in through here and sort of reassess and redefine these boundaries of color, like especially for skin tone, whether the skin tone of that individual is, yellow or white or purple or blue or whatever it is. Like there are certain rules that tend to be followed by organic humanoid creatures with skin that sort of define how color will invade itself. How color will invade itself as temperature and hue shifts, as form turns away from light, as light hits areas of the body with what's called subsurface scattering, where there's a lot of extra blood or blood circulation under that skin. An example being like the ear. tip of the nose. How long have I been at this now? 30 minutes. Not come very far for 30 minutes. Not crazy about that. But I'm also talking a lot, and multitasking has never been my particular strong suit. So you know what? I'll shut up for a while. See if I can get a little further. See where that takes me. That said, if anybody pops in and has a burning desire to ask a question, please do. I'm happy to field questions or talk more if there's somebody who wants to hear me say something. All right, well, I guess I'm going to call it there at about 52 minutes. Haven't made a ton of progress, but it's all right. Still kind of exploring with this piece. But happy with the trajectory it's on, at least. All right. See y'all later.